Hello, everyone. Let's start with the concept of feminism, the struggle for equality and liberation. So, at its heart, feminism is about achieving equality in all aspects between man and women. And we, the pupils of modern time, we know it very well that since the civilization began, women have been subjected to second status. और अगर एग्जाम्पल देखें तो it was only during the ancient time, in the beginning of the civilizational era, that certain civilizations such as the Egyptian and the Mesopotamian, you can say, and some example during the period of classical antiquity, ये सब civilizations थी जहाँ पे women were given a certain perceived equality. उसके अलावा the true equality, true equal status has not been given. And even the birthplace of modern democracy, Athens, and the philosophical democratic state, Roman Empire. So Greek, Roman Empire, and Athens, all of them, they did not provide equal status to women either. वहाँ पे भी women were subjected to the second status. So ultimately, feminism is about achieving that due status. And फिर ancient से medieval time में आते हैं. तो medieval time was a nightmare for the rights of women. इसमें तो इस period में तो women को कोई right मिले ही नहीं. But yet, during the modern and contemporary time, because of their protests, advocacy, and increasing recognition of their place, a few rights have been given to them. Now, let's start with the chapter. So, feminism emerged while challenging the historical and systemic subordination of women. Subordination means to give them a second status. At its core, feminism is about achieving political, social, and economic equality between men and women. So, the real purpose is to achieve equality in all sphere between men and women. So, there should not be any concern, there should not be any inequality, especially that is related to gender, because that thing is not scientific. That thing does not have any legal or scientific basis. However, feminism is not a single uniform ideology, rather, it consists of a broad and diverse range of ideas, movements, and theories. Then, feminist thinkers they have sought to expose the deep-rooted structure of patriarchy and gender discrimination. Now, patriarchy is the rule of father figure, or in short, the rule of man. So, अब from the ancient time, the social sphere में देखेंगे तो Homo sapiens they have been divided into two pairs, men and women. दो जेंडर ही हैं. तो इन दो जेंडर में men, historically men have been given more authority, more power, more decision making, and females they have been relegated to the household, the domestic roles, the nurturing role. In short, the distinction between man and women, the gender thing, which is the roles or tasks associated with each biological sex, male or female. So the roles that has been associated to man and women, they are nothing but division of labor, and this division it was necessary during the ancient time, before prehistoric time. The society भी नहीं बनी थी, civilization भी नहीं थे. I'm talking about way beyond than Paleolithic, way beyond than Stone Ages, when we were still living on trees, when we were primate species. Then we started diversifying into various hominid species. उस time पे this division of labor was necessary because it was like the center of everything, the family, the social group. It needed two arms. One, the first arm, which was physically strong, and dexterous, laborious. So this arm it arranged food, provided security, and looked after the broader affairs. Then there was the another arm that you can say they were less strong, but they were occupied with certain things when they were vulnerable. So this vulnerability, it stemmed from their nurturing role. Like women, they had to bear the children, they bear the child 9 months in womb, and still this was not enough, क्योंकि जो प्राइमेट किड्स होते हैं, जो प्राइमेट बेबीज होते हैं, फ्रॉम चिंपैंजीज टू ओरेंगुटैन, ये कह सकते हैं गिब्बन्स, कह सकते हैं बबून्स, कह सकते हैं सारे मंकीज, कह सकते हैं इवन बहुत सारे जो ममेलियन स्पीशीज हैं उनकी बात कर सकते हैं, होमो हैबिलिस, होमो इरेक्टस, जितने भी स्पीशीज हैं, the whole line that start with us and go deep in the past to to the last common ancestor. इन सब में जितने भी ancestors हैं, जितने भी species हैं, सबके babies जो हैं, they usually take long gestation time. Long gestation time means उनके adulthood तक पहुंचने के लिए time लगता है. They need long period of care. तो इसके लिए the women they are usually vulnerable because एक तो वो उनको उस बेबी को adulthood तक पहुंचाना है, साथ में उसके न्यूट्रिशन के लिए, उसके नरिशिंग के लिए, फैमिली की केयर के लिए, जो इंटरनल जो डायनामिक्स हैं उन सब पे कंट्रोल रखने के लिए भी वीमेन दे वर रिस्पॉन्सिबल. So this division of labor, it was genuine, it was natural, it was biological. क्योंकि इवन जो वीमेन है उनको अलाउ किया कि यू गो एंड यू नो हंट, फाइंड द फूड, प्रोटेक्ट द बाउंड्री, प्रोटेक्ट द फैमिली, बट स्टिल जो बेबी है वो तो उनको अपने वूम के अंदर ही कैरी करना है. So this vulnerability and this limitation, it was natural. But this natural division of labor, so when we started establishing ourselves in sedentary lifestyle, especially after Neolithic around 7000 BC, उसके बाद से धीरे धीरे जो स्टेशन लाइफ हैं, सेडेंट्री लाइफस्टाइल हैं, विलेजेस हैं, सेटल लाइफ है, दे स्टार्टेड ग्रोइंग. और फिर ये करते करते अराउंड 3000 BC जो फर्स्ट सिविलाइजेशन दे अपीयर्ड, फर्स्ट सिविलाइजेशन, फर्स्ट राइटिंग, they started appearing. And 3000 BC generally assume the time of prehistoric, when the prehistoric end and history starts. Prehistoric means the time when we do not have any written history. और हिस्टोरिक मीन्स जब हमारे पास कोई रिटन एविडेंस है, रिटन हिस्ट्री है, and that written language is deciphered. So 3000 BC, around Mesopotamia, Iraq, they were cradle of civilization. फिर वहां से लेकर उसके बाद तक this division of labor up to certain time, up to the ancient time, it was perceived natural, क्योंकि उस टाइम पे भी technological upgradation था नहीं. People were also living in a semi nomadic life or semi jungle life. So such division was acceptable up to that point, क्योंकि उसमें the men, they were they were out there hunting, finding food, protecting their family, and making available all the things that are needed for them to survive. And women, they were looking for all the internal humanistic nourishment or nutrition dynamics. So that was acceptable. फिर उसके बाद during medieval and modern time, such division of labor, it became petrified. uh, it was cast into stone and they were turned into social custom. Now, जब हमारे पास technological upgradations हैं, now we have freed our hands. अब protection के लिए we have another institution, police है, the home department is there, and the army and the military is there. तो अब वहाँ पे जो प्रोटेक्शन का डायनेमिक है वो भी चेंज हो गया. टेक्नोलॉजिकल अपग्रेडेशन के बाद जो कंसेप्शन है, जो रिप्रोडक्टिव राइट्स हैं, उनका भी डायनेमिक चेंज हो गया. तो ऐसे में दिस थिंग, it should change. The division of labor, now it need to be redefined, and that's what the core idea of feminism. So I've already explain the structure, the deep structure, patriarchy and gender discrimination from the historical time, then feminism has evolved through different waves, each wave addressing new dimension of inequality and seeking to reshape various structure. वो अभी आगे देखते हैं. Now, the origins and early context of feminism. So the early roots of feminism can be traced to the Enlightenment era in Europe. So Enlightenment era, जिनको नहीं पता है, so the medieval time, the time of feudalism, it was time where rationality was not advocated, people were not educated, technological upgradations were not there, scientific reasoning were not there. People used to believe uh, in the in the words of the religious man, in the words of religion blindly. Superstition were there. और ऐसे में आप जानते हैं कि the whole age was an age of darkness. Everything was dark. So to dispel this doom, to dispel this darkness, a new age came, an age of enlightenment to dispel this darkness. And बाकी आप समझ सकते हैं कि जितने आपको बताया है कि the main properties, the features of medieval time, they were dismantled and new ideas were created like rationality, scientific reasoning, technological progress, education, and belief and a non-belief in religious dogmas and progressivism, dismantling of both feudalism, the unhealthy influence of church, and finally dismantling of this regal structure, the royal structure that exists today. और उसी के बाद से फिर जो modern institutions हैं, they started coming. That was the Enlightenment era. And during this time, many political philosophers they emphasized ideas like liberty, equality, and democracy. The ideas that lighten up the sufferings of the time. And but उस टाइम पे these ideas they were often restricted to men. Maybe the idea थे वो, and women were largely excluded from the political community. Then comes the work of Mary Wollstonecraft, her book A Vindication of the Rights of Women. It laid the foundation for feminist thought by asserting that women are rational beings and they deserve the same education and rights as men. They deserve the same status. And Wollstonecraft argued that women's supposed inferiority is not natural, but rather a consequence of social conditioning and lack of educational opportunities. So again, so this inferiority means the subordination, the second status, not considering them equal. This was not natural. And how this is not natural, वो अभी आपको पूरे explanation में समझाया कि this division of labor, it was later turned into social customs, and without any reason and without any further thinking, they were sidelined, they were marginalized and confined to their domestic spheres. Otherwise, if such social conditionings of such social norms and customs were not there, and if women were given equal educational opportunities, the situation would have been different. But then in the 19th century, feminists like John Stuart Mill, in his work The Subjection of Women, emphasized that society could not be truly free or democratic if half of its population remained oppressed. So this half that Mill talk about is referring to women, and the first organized demand for women's rights took place at the Seneca Fall Convention in 1848 in the United States, where women demanded voting rights and legal equality. और एक फैक्ट बताता हूँ आपको मैं, that American independence it was achieved in 1776, and women started demanding for their equal status, the equal rights in 1776 itself. But they were given their due right, the right to uh, adult voting, universal adult suffrage, or right to suffrage, right to vote. They were given only in 1920. So women had to fight for their rights for a long time, especially in the progressive countries such as United States. ये तो अच्छी बात है कि हमारे इंडिया में इंडिपेंडेंस के साथ ही women were given equal voting rights. Let's move ahead. Now, the key concepts in feminist thought. First, patriarchy, the system of male domination. So, patriarchy refers to a social system where men hold primary power, primary financial and decision making power, and dominant in the roles of political leadership, moral authority, and control over property and family. So, all in all, patriarchy is about the rule of men where all the important decisions, whether they are about the financial decisions, whether they are about the property decisions, whether they are about other opportunities that are available, about autonomy, all such decisions they are taken over by men, and their women are not consulted in such decisions. And feminists argue that patriarchy is not simply about individual behavior, but it is systemic. It is an entire system that privileges man at the expense of women. क्योंकि यहाँ पे the old structure, the old scaffold, it is being repeated because uh, everyone says that it is the pocket, it is the money that serves everything. It is one money that is heart of everything. तो अगर पैसे की बात है, if women can be given independence, financial independence, तो उनके पास भी पैसा है. Now they can take decisions, all kind of decisions, all kind of political, administrative, financial, familial, and social decisions. Now, patriarchy operates through multiple mechanisms. Because it is reflected in legal codes, in religious teachings, in media representations, in education curricula, and in everyday social practice. That's why patriarchy is called systemic, something that has been entertained as natural, which otherwise it is not. And feminists highlight that patriarchy is often maintained not just by force or coercion, but creating norms that makes gender inequality appear natural. Just like a narrative, a historical narrative that has been making the round since thousands of years. Or इस narrative में it has been assumed, it has been conditioned in the social way, it has been conditioned in the children that this gender inequality, this social hierarchy, it is natural. And God or the ancient authorities, our ancestors, they have created us in this way, which makes the distinction between man and women as something that cannot be questioned, unquestionable distinction. Then Sylvia Walby, a leading feminist scholar, identifies six structures through which patriarchy operates. First, at the household level, then at the paid work, third, the state, then male violence, sexuality, and cultural institution. हाउस होल्ड आप जानते हैं जो फैमिली के अंदर इंपॉर्टेंट डिसीजंस हैं दे आर टेकन बाय फादर हस्बैंड और मैन देन एज ऑफ पेड वर्क so men engage in any kind of economic activity and they are paid for it, whereas women, their domestic work, the household work, it is not looked after and it is not paid, it is unpaid work. Like आप देख सकते हैं आज के टाइम में बेबी सीटर्स होते हैं. Now baby sitters, they are earning money by the same way the women of our species perform every day without being paid. फिर यही सेम फूड का हो सकता है. Like the food that is cooked by the female members, it is considered an unpaid work, something like a duty. लेकिन यही फूड जो होस्ट होटल है, रेस्टोरेंट है, या जहाँ भी जो ईटिंग जॉइंट्स है वहाँ पे फूड मिलता है बट उसके पैसे लगते हैं. तो यहाँ पे पेड वर्क जो है उसके डायमेंशन बहुत सारे हो सकते हैं. लाइक वॉशर वुमन का हो सकता है, वॉशरमैन का हो सकता है, एंड कैन ऑल्सो कंसिडर द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ डोमेस्टिक मेड और डोमेस्टिक हेल्प. यहाँ पे भी जो डोमेस्टिक मेड है उसका जो वर्क जो भी होगा वो सब पेड है, बट यही फीमेल मेंबर्स करती है, उनका पेड, उनका वर्क अनपेड होता है. फिर द स्टेट, so the state, the government, it is structured in a way in which men hold the important position and women are not given their due. Where male violence, so male are considered inherently violent, and it is often assumed that males go to war and female they suffer. So this is again a dimension of patriarchy. Then, as of sexuality, so sexuality is about the roles and behavior that are associated with each sex, each biological sex. Then, cultural institution, वो आप जानते हैं, cultural norms. So these are the six platforms, six structure by which patriarchy operates. Now, the second principle, sex and gender, the social construction of identity. So another contribution of feminist theory is the distinction between sex and gender. Sex refers to the biological differences between males and females, whereas genders, it refers to the associated, the ascribed role, behavior, activities, and attributes that are considered appropriate for men and women. So in short, if sex is the biological structure of males and female, the biological distinction of being male and female, gender, it is the ascribed role that is considered fit for that particular biological role. And feminists argue that gender is not natural outcome of biological difference, which is not so, because even if biological differences are there, uh, some of this ascribed status, the ascribed role means roles that are given to us by our family members, by our religion, by our custom, by our society. So they cannot be taken at face value. They cannot be considered true, and you do not need any further explanation on that. क्योंकि ये possible ही नहीं है. Like it's only about uh, uh, the childbirth, the birth of child. तो यहाँ पे एक नेचुरल लिमिटेशन है, लेकिन आज के टाइम में वो भी लिमिटेशन हट गया है. जो आईवीएफ होते हैं, टेस्ट ट्यूब बेबीज हैं, ठीक है, तो उस या फिर सरोगेसी है, इनको देखें तो जो वो लिमिटेशन है वो भी खत्म हो गई. उसके बाद जो अस्क्राइब स्टेटस है, दे आर नॉट नो लॉन्गर वर्किंग एनीमोर. So feminists are right here to contest this distinction, and they argued that this gender thing, this ascribed status, is not natural, and they are socially constructed and maintained through various institutions like family institutions, educational institutions, religion, media. So a narrative, a historical narrative is being created, and it has been created for a long time, so that such ascribed status, such given roles are considered natural. An example has been given here, a belief that women are naturally more nurturing and suited to domestic role. It is a cultural belief than a biological fact. Yes, because this is not purely biological fact. Yes, women, uh, they have this nurturing side, this, but to assume that since they have been naturally given this role to produce babies, so they are fit for domestic roles. So this conflagration, this analogy is not right. Yes, if they have been limited by the nature to carry the child in their womb, so this thing, this particular thing can take up, 3 years of their life. But assume that women are fit only for that work, women are fit only for nurturing and domestic work, it is a cultural belief and it is wrong. Then Simone de Beauvoir of a famous statement in the work The Second Sex, that one is not born but rather becomes a woman, which captured the idea that feminism or femininity is an identity and ascribed role that is imposed by society, not by nature. And the third principle is intersectionality, which is the multiplicity of operations. Intersectionality, which means the interconnections between different sections. It is a concept developed by Kimberly Crenshaw to explain how different forms of operation or different social operations like race, class, caste, sexuality, and gender, they interact with each other. And if any feminism, it focuses only on one gender without considering other axes of operation, they would fail to capture the real experience for many women, because the real thing in the livelihood, they are not as static. Intersectionality means that सोसाइटी में सिर्फ जेंडर बेस्ड डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ही नहीं है, रेस बेस्ड discriminations हैं, class based discriminations are there, caste based discriminations are there. Uh, ऐसे में one person may suffer from multiple wounds, multiple discrimination at one time. So that's the core idea, this intersectionality. Like for example, a woman that belong to a marginalized caste in India, she faces two discriminations in one go. First, gender-based discrimination because she is a woman, and then she belongs to a marginalized caste, so they will be caste-based operation. And now the suffering that is borne by her double discrimination, it would be more than uh, any other woman who would facing discrimination only for being a woman. Now, to put it another way, एक और example लेते हैं. For example, A is a woman who is from a scheduled caste community, then she is a woman, and then she is physically disabled. Now, what of it? You can see the intersectionality being played out here. Three the kind of discrimination, three disability, three wounds in one go. Now, her pain, it would be a lot more. It would be manifold more than the women from any other community, any other country that is facing discrimination solely being a woman. So that's the intersectionality that is pointed out here. And similarly, women of color, working class women, and LGBTQ women often experience unique form of discrimination that cannot be understood solely through the lens of gender. So this static dynamic or static thing is not there. The world is quite playful और यहाँ पे बहुत सारी चीजें they play out in a ruling way. And finally, intersectionality emphasizes the need for feminism to be inclusive and attentive to diversity of women's experience across different contexts. Yes, that's the beautiful thing that women, they have different context, different social, financial, educational context. So their experience, the experience of their discrimination, they will also vary. And to address such concern, intersectionality should be given away. It should be given a thought. Now, the next principle, personal is political. So earlier, uh, the political analysis, it focused on public sphere, government, parliament, military, while they consider the private sphere of family and personal life, they are apolitical. They should not be included in it. But feminists, they challenge this division between public and private sphere by showing that issues like domestic violence, marital rape, reproductive rights, sexual harassment, division of household labor, these things, these personal things, they are also deeply critical because they involve power relations and social norms. So yes, here they highlighted a key thorny issue that since all such personal issues, also the issues of family, they involve force, they may involve crime, and certainly they do not involve consent at all. So legally, these things, they go beyond the issue, the purview of personal thing. Now they have entered the public arena, the legal arena. So these personal things, they should not be considered personal anymore. They have become political. और ये distinction जो है, it was highlighted by feminism. The personal is all political, and it had been a rallying cry of second wave of feminism. So, by breaking down the barrier between public and private, feminism expanded the scope of political analysis and activism. Now, let's talk about waves of feminism. The first wave of feminism from 19th to early 20th century. So this first wave, it focused mainly on securing basic legal rights for women, particularly the right to vote, access to education, and property rights. And important achievement of first wave include women's suffrage. Suffrage means voting rights in countries like New Zealand, Britain, and the United States. However, this wave was criticized because it largely reflected the concern of middle-class white women and often neglected the issues that are faced by working class and non-white women. And in India, figures like Sarojini Naidu and Annie Besant, they campaigned for women's political rights along the national struggle. Where the second wave of feminism from 1960s to 1980s. So this wave broadened the feminist agenda to include issues such as reproductive rights, workplace discrimination, sexuality, family role, and violence against women. And here, texts like Betty Friedan's The Feminist Mistake, it criticized the idealization of women's role as housewives and mothers. Women, they highlighted that women are not only fit for the domestic role, they can also play significant role in all sphere that can be competed and compared with that of men. And her work also showed that these issues they are echoed by widespread community, and there was widespread dissatisfaction and psychological distress because of this marginalization. And feminists demanded equal pay, access to contraception, abortion, and protection against domestic violence and sexual harassment. So these were the demands that were put forward by the second wave. And finally, जो भी बताया था, the personal is political. It became a rallying cry, which emphasized that everyday experience of women they are shaped by large social structure. They are personal and they involve the use of force in a non-consensual way that makes the personal issues of domestic violence, of sexuality, of sexual harassment a legal and political thing. Where the third wave of feminism from 1990s to 2000s. So this wave emerged partly as a reaction to the perceived limitation of the second wave. And this wave emphasized diversity, individuality, and recognition that women's experience differ based on race, class, sexuality, religion, and nationality. So it means third wave it recognizes the importance of significance of intersectionality. And this wave also challenged the idea of universal female identity and embraced a more fluid understanding of gender and sexuality, which means the female experiences and their identity they are not universal. They there is a flexibility and fluidity in their experiences. And they also celebrated female empowerment, sexual agency, and self-expression. Where India में Dalit feminism, tribal women's movement, and LGBTQ plus activism, it highlighted the need to address multiple and intersecting forms of oppression. Next comes the fourth wave of feminism from 2010s to present. So this wave is characterized by digital activism, intersectional analysis, and focus on issues, the modern issues that women facing, like sexual harassment, body shaming, trans rights, and workplace inequality. और फिर उसके लिए this hashtag #MeToo movements, they have exposed the widespread nature of sexual violence and harassment across the world. So this wave, it uses social media as a powerful tool to mobilize support, share experiences, and challenge dominant narratives. Now let's proceed on to the types of feminism. First, the liberal feminism. So liberal feminism seeks gender equality through legal and political reform. And this branch of feminism believes that if various legal barriers, if they are removed to women's entry into education, employment, and politics, they will certainly bring in the gender equality. So liberal feminists, they work within existing institution and advocate for policy like anti-discrimination law, equal pay legislation, and affirmative action. Here, existing institution means the existing patriarchal institution like the legislature, the government, the state, the legal administrative apparatus. So these institutions, they are employed, and here advocacy for women's equal status are being put forward. Key thinkers associated with that: first, Mary Wollstonecraft, John Stuart Mill, and Betty Friedan. The second branch is radical feminism. Radical feminism, they view patriarchy as a fundamental system of operation that need to be dismantled completely. And that's why the name radical. So they argue that gender inequality is rooted in the most basic structure of society, like family, the sexual relation, the personal relation, the culture, the social norms. And they believe that since the gender inequality, the operation, it is fixed in, it is rooted in at such basic level, the true liberation, it does not require just legal reform, but a radical reorganization of society's fundamental institutions. So all those institutions, family, sexual relations, interpersonal relations, social norms, custom, religion, culture, all of them, they need to be reorganized, and uske baad hi true gender equality would be achieved. And here issues like reproductive rights, sexual violence, and then the portrayal of women in media, they are central concern, where key thinkers Andrea Dworkin, Catherine McKinnon, and Sulamit Firestone. Where the next branch of feminism, Marxist and Socialist feminism. So both these branches, they link women's operation to the oppressive capital system, and they argue that capitalism and patriarchy, they work together to exploit women because both of them, they are inherently exploitative. And this exploitation of women is quite particular in their role as unpaid caregiver and low wage worker. So first, in patriarchy, their domestic work, it is unpaid, and in capitalism, they are often at the receiving end, and उनको बहुत कम पे मिलता है. And this branch advocate for economic restructuring, public provision of childcare, equal pay, and collective ownership of resources. And all these changes, all these reforms are essential for women's liberation. And here, Alexandra Kollontai is a key figure in socialist feminism who emphasize that women's emancipation is inseparable from the broader struggle of socialism. In the next branch, ecofeminism. Ecofeminism highlight that there is a connection between the operation of women and the destruction of environment. They argue that both forms of domination, it stem from the manly patriarchal worldview that value control, exploitation, and domination over cooperation and care. So in short, ecofeminists, uh, they distinguish the core personal quality of man and women in this way, that men, they are inherently obsessed about control, exploitation, and domination, whereas women can be associated with cooperation, nurturing, and care. And ecofeminists call for a new ecological consciousness which value interconnectedness and sustainability. And here there is an Indian ecofeminist like Vandana Shiva who has played a significant role. Then comes the final branch, postmodern feminism. So postmodern feminism, it critiques the idea of universal category of women and emphasize the fluidity of identity, which means you know a recognition of intersectionality. And this branch argues that gender, sexuality, and even personal identity, they are socially constructed and constantly in flux, constantly changing. And here, Judith Butler's work, The Gender Trouble, it introduced the concept of performativity, which challenge the fixed notions of masculinity and femininity. Now, एक बार जूडिथ बटलर का ये concept देख लेते हैं, gender performativity. So this Performativity, it is about um, repetition of an action that leads to creation of an identity. So these two things are there. First, if you do something repetitively, then this will impose an identity upon you. Then it also means then that gender is not a fixed identity. It is a fluid identity, something that changes with your actions. And this concept of gender performativity, it also argued that gender is not what something is, it is what something does. So it is about action. Now, the thing here is that first, gender का आपको पहले ही बताया कि there is a gender, the difference between gender and sex. Sex is the biological differences, biological characteristic of both males and females, and gender is the assigned role, the assigned social role that is considered fit for each sex. Now, this concept, it also speaks along the same line, but in a different way. That it is your repetition of actions, and if your identity is being borne out by your repetition of action, by your action, then it is you who can change this identity. And if you can change this identity, then this identity is not fixed, it is fluid. So that's the whole overall concept of gender performativity. And finally, postmodern feminists encourage greater attention to cultural diversity, multiplicity, and difference. Now, the criticisms of feminism. So this branch, it has this theory, it has faced several criticism over time. First criticism, that earlier waves of feminism, they were too focused on experience of middle class white women, while they ignored the needs of marginalized group from working class and people of color, people of different culture and nationality. There some critics argue that feminists can be essentialist, which means that they assume that all women share the same experience. There is no universal definition of experience, no universal feminine pain. Yeah, each experience, they are based on their own context. And others point out that feminism sometimes appears to marginalize men's issue because they keep portraying man as inherently oppressive. Now, the contemporary feminism, they address these criticisms by adopting intersectional approach and strive for greater inclusivity and sensitivity to differences. And finally, the feminism in India. So in India, feminism developed alongside the nationalist movement. शुरू से ही जब से freedom struggle start हुआ, the medieval reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, they campaign against the social ill practices like sati or widow remarriage. Then women like Savitribai Phule, they work tirelessly to promote education for girls from marginalized communities. Where post-independence, Indian feminists, they addressed issues like dowry deaths, domestic violence and sexual harassment at workplace, and finally caste-based discriminations. Then the protests against Mathura rape case, then Nirbhaya rape case, the Hyderabad rape case. तो उन सब प्रोटेस्ट के बाद भी बहुत सारे ये important legal changes हुए हैं. And finally, the contemporary Indian feminism, it continued to address communal violence, caste-based discriminations, rural poverty, and LGBTQ plus rights. And finally, before winding up this topic, I would like to talk about this topic of Judith Butler, gender performativity. So, this performativity, it is made up of this word formate, which means the ascribed or assigned role. The formate has been given to both the biological sexes. And what I want to highlight is that this gender thing, this is my personal and but scientific belief is that your gender is about your action. It is about the characteristic, the feature that you show that you align with. So the masculine or the feminine qualities, they are not assigned, they are not natural, or they are not inherent. It is what you make of them. For example, masculine quality or the quality of being male is about the action you indulge yourself into. Like male is not the biological thing. You hear the ascribed role, the ascribed duties, or the ascribed task that are given to, they are assigned to the male sex. It isn't about biology. Like it's not that every man that is born as a biological male will have masculine qualities. That's my point. And that's where I want to highlight this concept, performativity. So your biological thing, if even if you are born as a male, you do not you are not entitled to masculine qualities. You are not entitled to this male gender role. Because you can take the example of Indira Gandhi, you can take the example of Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi, you can take example of women all over the world. In all these scenarios, in all these examples, the person who hunt can be called a male because then it's a masculine quality. So now that hunter, it can be a male or female. That's my point. Second thing, if someone protects, the duty of protection, the duty of being a soldier. Now, whoever protect will be called a soldier, will be called a protector. And that doesn't have to be a man always. It can be biologically female. But even if that quality is manly, thus, this does not have anything to do with your biological sex. Again, the third example, like cooking. Now, this thing, uh, man can be cook, a woman can be cook. This thing, it does not have to be, an issue of a prerogative of female only. Ultimately, being a man or being a woman, being a masculine or being a feminine, they do not have anything to do with the biology. They depend on on your action. So a woman can be a hunter. A woman can have manly qualities, and a man can have womanly qualities. It all depends on your features and your actions. All right, this is it. And again, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and you can also spread the word to your fellows. This is it.